Okay, hello. Good morning and good afternoon. My name is Brian Bell. Thank you for joining me and my peer, Jenny Fong, here from Esri Canada's utility team to spend the next hour or so learning about a new set of capabilities we commonly refer to as the utility network. As we go along, I'd like to invite you to ask as many questions as you would like. To do that, please use the Q&A panel. Be sure to choose to ask all panelists, type your question into the box, and click send. We may not get to answer every question, but at least this way we will see your question, so if we can't answer it, we will follow up with you. We want to talk about today about how some of our newer technologies are creating and delivering additional business value for you. We really want to focus on connecting capabilities and information products to your business challenges and initiatives that drive your organization forward as a whole. This wheel tends to speak to those in general buckets that make sense to how a utility operates, and we tend to often generalize those at a technology level into three broader systems, which we are showing here on the left. That idea of a system of insight, a system of engagement, and a system of record. Today's focus will be on the construct we generally refer to as a system of record, which is typically thought of as the most significant series of workflows within the designing and planning and data management groupings in the wheel. Keep in mind that the outputs of those processes tend to impact almost every other segment of your business, however. And we'll focus on how the transition from a database-driven geometric network to the web services-driven model of the utility network significantly streamlines that effort of sharing and data management, in addition to providing a whole new set of capabilities that you can use to augment your existing network management workflows. Just in case you're not able to stick around to the end of this session, I wanted to make sure that you saw this. This is a self-assessment app that we built and deployed and is available on our public site, and you can get through the URL at the bottom of this slide, that will enable you to connect with us, be put into a stream of information about enhancements and new releases and new capabilities for the utility network, and also provide you with some tools and techniques to help determine what is the right path forward for your organization. And anyone can fill this out and then be given access to that information. Now today, we're going to try to focus on helping you understand and answer three questions. We're going to focus on what is the utility network and why was it developed. We're going to focus on what new capabilities can it provide that may add business value. And what should I be doing if, when, and how for my company should I implement the utility network. And throughout this whole thing, we're going to conduct a number of different demonstrations that Jenny is going to help me out with. Now to start us off at a high level, we want to dig down into the broad topic front. I want to start by answering this question of why. Why did we create the utility network? And at a fundamental level, we did that because your world is changing, and it's changing in many different ways for many different reasons. The vast majority of people in the industry believe that the rate of change in the utility industry is going to accelerate dramatically, with broad statements being made regularly that utility industry will change more in the next 5 years than it has in the past 100, and so on and so on. So we wanted to make sure that as a key technology provider for you, that we provided you with the right tools to help you manage that change rather than succumb to it. And we didn't design our new network management capabilities in a vacuum. We worked hard to engage with our customers and the industry as a whole to hear about your challenges and drivers, and we wanted to use that to prioritize the new capabilities that we released and more closely align our network management roadmap with the rest of the ArcGIS capability model. This series of items that you see here represents some of the elements of that customer feedback, which you can see ranging from specific data quality enforcement requests all the way through to very generic or very broad brush business requirements. There is a theme within these, though, And it's the unstated recognition that GIS is currently playing and will continue to play an ever-increasing role in the operational side of your business, despite the fact that its roots are in engineering and asset management. The initial drivers that saw the creation of the utility network and utilities, or saw the creation of GIS and utilities, has changed. If we're looking for a slightly more product or technically oriented view of the utility network and why it was created, you can see in this slide some statements around our vision and the product overview. Essentially, we wanted to provide you with a means to maintain a more accurate representation of what's on the ground and do it in a way that more seamlessly interacts with the ArcGIS platform as a whole. We also wanted to nail down and address some very common requests of our product strategy, such as increasing or improving performance, increasing interoperability, and finding ways to always lessen the total cost of ownership that goes along with having a leading-edge network management geospatial technology. If we want to go even one level geekier on this, we've taken those fundamental capabilities and moved them to the web services model for network management and away from a purely database-driven interaction. Editing, analysis, connectivity management, long-term transaction management, which some of you know as versioning, and also network validation and quality control. All of those essential advanced network management capabilities now reside at the web services tier with the utility network, enabling a truly enterprise approach to data management. This is a key difference from the geometric network, where partner-supported capabilities often resided as part of database logic. Now they can reside at the services tier and be exposed to all clients, supporting the whole company, not just a single class of users. This also opens the door for flexibility for us, our partners, and our customers, you, to deploy capabilities across your organization in whatever way is required to suit your business. From a best practices perspective, we're working towards being able to provide advanced visualization capabilities, world-leading editing capabilities, and the ability to support complex analysis as being targeted towards professional desktop users of the utility network, driven primarily through ArcGIS Pro. For thinner client access, specifically driven by a web and online world, we're targeting dashboards and consumption-oriented use cases initially to be supported by the utility network, although the web services model does provide the ability for you to deploy editing workflows that interact directly with the network through a browser. It's also noteworthy here that as part of the new capability model of the utility network, many administrative functions are being moved to this type of user interaction, which is a significant difference from our legacy network management technologies. And of course, there is a strategy and direction around the use of our runtime APIs and offline workflow support directly within the utility network. Now, some parts of this are available today, some are still in the R&D cycle, but what you can see from this slide is that we have built a utility network with an architecture geared towards supporting those utility-specific field editing and analysis workflows, which is another significant difference between the utility network and the geometric network. Now, I've been talking for about 10 minutes so far, and I thought what might make sense is rather than me continue to ramble on, I'll pass things over to Jenny to take you through some basic concepts of the utility network in ArcGIS Pro and put a little bit of meat behind what I've been saying. Jenny?
Thanks, Brian. So here what I have open is ArcGIS Pro, and this is the application in which your GIS professionals would use to manage and maintain your utility network. Here we can see that I'm actually logged in using my identity into my enterprise organization, and I'm actually consuming services that have been published to this location. For those of you who are familiar with ArcGIS Pro, you will see the different ribbons that I have available to me with the different tool sets. And then you'll also see that I have a specific tool set for the utility network management side. On the left, we have the content pane, which lists the different services that I have available to me, as well as the way in which they're symbolized. If we take a closer look at the content pane, we can see that the utility network is actually comprised of 5 different feature classes. We have the devices and junctions, which represent your point assets. These are things like your valves, your controllers, your fittings, your switches, and fuses. Then we have our assemblies, which represent the logical containers for banked features, things like your reducing stations, your transformer banks, and fuse banks. We have the line features, which are your linear assets, things like your conductors and your pipes. And then we have something called the subnet line. Now, the subnet line is something that is system maintains, and it represents the different circuits in your network, as well as pressure zones or isolation zones. If I go ahead and expand one of these feature classes, we can start to see how things are categorized. Here in my water domain network, we have my devices grouped into asset groups. Here we can see things like your controllers, your pumps, your valves, and your pressure valves. In terms of the electric side, you would have things like your transformers, fuses, and switches. If we go ahead and expand these one down further, we can start to see that they are further categorized by the different asset types. So here for pressure valves, we see things like your air release, your reducing, and release valves. Now, along with the utility network feature classes, we also have a structural network. And the structural network is comprised of 3 different feature classes. We have the structured junctions and structured lines, which represent things like your poles, your trenches, and your duct banks. And then we also have the structure boundary, which represents features that have an outline, like your substations. Now, what makes things innovative with the way in which structures are modeled in the utility network is that you are now able to easily and simply identify the different structures that are associated with the different pressure zones or circuits. This was something that was not very easily done in the legacy version. So next, I'm going to take a look at how the utility network has brought in innovative functionality to help utilities model a higher fidelity of data that is required for a future ADMS systems. Here, I have my electric domain network, and I'm going to be showing you this functionality by walking you through an editing process to maintain my data. Let's imagine that I have a work order that has come back from the field and has been passed to me as a GIS professional at my utility. The first thing that I would do is go ahead and create a version to house my edits, as well as locate the location of my work order. And because the utility network does support a multi-user editing environment using versioning and long-term transactions, I've already actually started and entered into a particular version inside of ArcGIS Pro. And reviewing the work order, I can see at this particular location that I'm actually missing a transformer as well as a couple of service meters to feed these buildings here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom into this area here, and we're going to start adding these features in. And what I'll be using is something called Esri feature templates. We can see here on this feature pane that I have a whole bunch of different templates available to me. But my administrator has actually pre-configured a couple of special templates for me to use for these kinds of jobs. The first one that I'll be using is called a preset template, and this will be used to place my transformer. A preset template is a way for me to actually place a whole bunch of different features into the map all with one click. Preset templates are actually predefined assets with predefined attributes and a particular spatial orientation and layout. And so I can go ahead and find my overhead transformer. We can see that it will place a whole bunch of different features into the map. I'll just go ahead and click on that and place that into the map first. Now that that's done, we can start to place in the service drops. And to do these service drops, I'll be using something called a group template. Now, group templates are similar to the other ones, where that it allows me to place a whole bunch of predefined features. But instead of placing them all at once into the map, it actually allows me to control which feature I want to place in each consecutive click. So here I have my overhead 3-phase service drop. Let's take a look at what that will entail. Now my first click will be the location of my attachment point for all the different secondary services. Every consecutive click after that will be the location of my service meters, all while placing in a secondary line in between each of the different clicks. And with that, I've already placed in all the different features that I need to for this particular work order. If I take a look at the edits that I've made, I can start to see that I have the three-phase existing line that's there, as well as the pole that was pre-existing. And then I have the transformer that I've added in, as well as the secondary lines. Now, the utility network has actually introduced a new idea called containers. And this allows me to actually have different devices or assemblies encase different devices. So here I can go ahead and take a look at this transformer bank and look into it to see what it is encasing. Once I enter into the containment view, I can see that that one click that I placed into the map was actually placing 3 arresters, 3 fuses, 3 transformers, as well as a transformer bank, all with one click. And by using these preset templates, you can ensure that the data quality, data accuracy, as well as data standards are in place for your utility and your editors. But you'll notice one thing that's missing. You don't actually see any physical attachments between the existing 3-phase line to the transformer and then to the secondary lines. And that's because now you can not only have coincidental connectivity, but you can also have implicit connectivity using something called associations. So what that means is that I can actually tell the utility network that even though these assets are not directly connected, I want to have them logically connected inside of my network. And to do so, I can go ahead and modify my associations. So here I'm going to open up the association pane here, and the first thing that I can see is the transformer bank itself and what it's containing. So I can see here all the different components that are contained within that transformer. As an editor, I can go ahead and add and remove different devices as I see fit for this particular work order. Next step is to actually create a structural attachment for that pole and the transformers. So if I go ahead and select that the pole itself, I can see that I already have an existing attachment on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and add the transformer as well as the secondary connection point itself and apply that. From there, I can go ahead and make the connectivity from the existing network into the transformer and then to the secondary lines. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and select the endpoint of the 3-phase line and then connect it up to the arresters into the transformers. With that, the last thing will be to actually connect the transformers into the secondary lines. So here we're going to choose the connection point from the secondaries and then connect it up to the transformers themselves. Now you'll notice that the transformers are slightly different. We actually have this option for terminal, and we have an high side and a low side. And that's because transformers, among other things, are considered terminal devices. What this basically means is that there is a difference between the high side of a device and the low side, and this is important during outage events. Now that I'm just going to go and connect that up to the low side and click Apply. Now that that's all done, I can actually go ahead and visualize all these associations by turning on the visualize associations. And here I can see that these green lines here, these green dotted lines, represent the structural attachments that are structural associations that are that I've just applied, and then these brown lines represent the connectivity associations that I've applied here. So now everything is connected up into the existing 3-phase line through to the transformer and then to the secondary lines that I've placed in. Now the utility network is actually keeping track of all the different edits that I'm making which affect the utility network itself. And it's doing so by creating something called dirty areas. I can visually see these dirty areas by turning on the utility network layer. And then we can see these blue polygons show up. Now, from here I can go ahead and validate my dirty areas, and it will go through all the different business rules that I've placed onto the database to ensure that my data that I'm adding in is actually correct. From there, I can go ahead and exit the containment mode and save my edits into the version. At this point in time, I can now start to do analysis on the new section of the network by doing some tracing. Now, Esri actually provides a tracing framework, which allows users to run different types of traces and return them exactly as they want to see them. That being said, Esri does provide a handful of different tracing tools out of the box here. As we can see, we have the connected trace, upstream and downstream trace. If I go ahead and open one of them, we can see that it's a geoprocessing tool with a whole bunch of different options available to me. And because they're a geoprocessing tool, I can save these configurations and call them to be run at any particular moment. Now, what I like to do is I actually like to string these together and go into and string these tracing tools into a pro task. Now, what pro tasks are is a way for you to actually pre-configure the steps to guide users through a workflow or a business process. And the particular pro task that I'll be using right now is the downstream trace. So the first step will be to actually place the starting point of the trace itself. And the next point will be to actually run the trace itself. Once I'm running it, it will go ahead and return to me everything that's downstream from my starting point and return it as a selection set. At this point in time, if I go ahead and zoom back into the area which I just added in some secondary services, you can see that that was also returned in my tracing analysis itself. Now, if you didn't want to view this particular network inside of the GIS, or if you had to pass this on to, let's say, your design department or your engineering department, you can also create schematic-like diagrams on the fly. And we could do so using diagram templates. Now, what diagram templates are is a way for you to pre-configure the symbology that will be used in your schematic diagram, the way in which the layout will look, as well as what you want to see and what you don't want to see in the schematic drawing itself. In this particular template, I have it set to a geographical layout. However, if you wanted to, you can go ahead and change it to any other layout that has been pre-configured by Esri and have that schematic drawing changed to that particular layout. Now, this was just a few highlights of what the utility network and the different functions that are available to you are available for you. Brian?
All right, thanks, Jenny. That's a great overview, a good start. It's really interesting. Some of those capabilities that you showed have either been fragmented or not available, or things that customers have really wanted. The schematic example that you showed right at the end there, some of our customers have implemented an extension called schematics for ArcGIS. It's noteworthy that the utility network has all of those capabilities built right into it. So by implementing a utility network, you just have all of that schematic generation capabilities built right in. Now, earlier I mentioned how more and more utilities are leveraging GIS to support operational processes. This is driven primarily by a progression towards the need for what is sometimes referred to as a digital twin. A more true-to-life modeling of your assets, equipment, facilities, not just in structure, but also in behavior. For utilities, capturing or creating a digital twin of their network in the field positions you for a major business driver that many of you are dealing with called digital transformation. The utility network supports the intelligence and availability of business logic within the network model through something known as an asset package and industry configuration, which Jenny started to touch on when she began her demonstration by reviewing the general structure of a utility network. Now, the utility network configurations are baselines that are highly configurable, that you can add your own business logic and rule base to, and are extensible beyond a template configuration by both partners and customers. They stack up on top of ArcGIS and the utility network framework of capabilities and are extensible as required. They're limited only by what we can create, and they aren't rigid or inflexible beyond a handful of general guiding principles that are required by the underlying network management framework. The visual depiction on the right-hand side of this slide shows how those different components tend to stack up on top of one another from a deployment perspective. Now, those industry configurations exist for specific domain networks. You may have heard Jenny use that word, a domain, earlier. We use a domain to represent a unique set of capabilities specific to an industry to each other at the same time require more than one for your business. Components of a network can also be shared across multiple domains or types of network. Electric set. You can have those. You can. So hopefully it sounds a little bit better. Hopefully this sounds a little bit better right now. Apologies for that. So if we look at this set of different components of a network and multiple domains, I mentioned the example of an electric utility that also has telecommunications equipment. Well, let's also think about a water utility that has potable and wastewater and might have a single cathodic protection system that needs access to assets in both of those types. So you can connect these different components in different industries with different domains and different asset packages. Now, just being fully transparent, you'll notice a little asterisk beside the word telco in the lower left-hand corner. The telco industry configuration itself is still a work in progress. The others have all been released. There are a few challenges related to the way telco infrastructure must be modeled that we're still working on in our product roadmap. But the rest of these are fully available today to all of our customers. I'd also like to highlight how Jenny drew some comparisons to different scales of data, different levels of information. She used the word fidelity. So that's a term that we use to talk about the capabilities of the network to manage and store intrinsic relationships and the amount of information that can be modeled. We generally refer to hi-fi or low-fi network configurations, but the reality is your options and the associated data maintenance requirements that come with those options are limitless. Most gas, water, and even modest electric utilities will see massive benefits from a utility network with a low fidelity model. But if you have the need for custom or complex connection logic, like what you might find in a SIM model, the common information model, or if you're looking for a closer fit to a power systems model, you can actually manage your GIS network model to that level of precision. The diagram that you see in the middle of this slide is kind of an example of a move towards a more high fidelity model when all of the distinct connection points and details within a transformer are able to be modeled with their connections relative to each other managed. So you can do this now with partner solutions and also with core technology, but you can do it without a hurdle that we've required in the past called a custom class extension. These custom class extensions delivered business logic at the database tier, which subsequently required a matching level of custom business logic at the client tier. The utility network delivers these superior capabilities without that baggage of what we call a custom class extension, and the network behavior lives at the services tier, which is that common bridge point. This is a major step forward for ArcGIS technology. And since I've made that comment about this being a major step forward, I'm going to pass things over to Jenny to, for lack of a better way to say it, to put my money where my mouth is and show you some of this more advanced logic in action. Jenny?
Sorry, I'm just trying to share my screen. There you go. Okay, so here, as Brian was mentioning, utility network came out and business partners have continued to actually provide focus tools and capability to support the utility business workflows. And Schneider Electric has done just that with the release of Editor 11. Now, Editor 11 is an add-on to ArcGIS Pro and provides different capabilities to streamline the different business tasks and workflows to make things easier for the utilities. So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to show you some of my favorite things that ArcFM Editor 11 actually provides. Here, with the add-on, you can see that there is a dedicated ArcFM Editor 11 ribbon that gives you a handful of different tool sets that you would be using quite often during your work in Pro, as well as a whole bunch of different ArcFM tools. The first tool that I'm going to talk about is the Find Feeder tool. Now, the Find Feeder tool here will allow you to actually quickly search for a particular feeder and see some of the analytics on it. So here I can go ahead and find GR505. We can click on the Stats button and see how many customers are on there as well as the different load. We can then go ahead and highlight the source or find the source, as well as depict the extent of the circuit itself on the map. The next thing that I'll talk about is tracing. Now, Editor 11 provides a handful of different traces for the different verticals, making it easier for the users to run as well as to use. Here, I can go ahead and easily click on the downstream trace, place it inside of my network as a starting point, and have the phase wheel show up to indicate to me whether or not I want to have a phase-specific trace run. Here, I'm just going to run it on a 3-phase trace. Once I've done that, it will return to me in a graphic or a selection set. The next thing, and the last thing that I will talk about in Editor 11 is that it provides a way for you to view and edit operable devices using visual editing. If I go ahead and zoom into this switch here, I can go ahead and select this switch and open up the component view here and visually see an engineering-like view of the switch itself. And as an editor, I can easily go ahead and click on these to open up specific phases to change the operational status of the switch itself. Just with a couple of clicks, I've already changed the switch to be energized on A phase instead. Now, these are just a handful of different tools that are available in Editor 11, but there are many more to streamline the business workflow for your organization.
All right, thanks, Jenny. Yeah, so that's a good initial example there of a couple different use cases or a couple different tools that provide that next level of business intelligence that really understand what that person would be trying to do while they're doing it. And if you could think about someone in an operational context thinking about wanting to operate a device, how do they think about operating that device? They think about finding it and physically opening it by performing some action against it, not by going into a table and looking for a specific attribute and changing the value of that attribute. So you get that kind of experience that's appropriate for the use case. Now, I wanted to show you guys a diagram that you've probably seen quite a few times from Esri over the years. And this is our sort of an example of one of our general services-based distributed architecture diagrams that show the different components of ArcGIS in action together. The reality of this diagram is that while it supported this vision, our network management technology didn't fully subscribe to this architecture the way the rest of ArcGIS does, because the geometric network actually ran solely inside the geodatabase and required a series of processes to expose those capabilities as a service across the organization. The utility network has addressed this. So if we think about this same diagram and we think about the utility network, it conforms to the complete platform architecture of ArcGIS as a services-based data management and analysis capability of ArcGIS Enterprise directly. This is big, and I'm confident it will become a fundamental pillar of how GIS supports your business in the coming years. Now, network management and the utility network is a relatively new product release for us. Its first release was in January of this year. It will continue to be a key part of our R&D plan going forward, but specifically I'll mention a few elements that are in the next few development cycles that we're working towards expanding the capabilities of the utility network in line with this list that you can see on the left of this slide. The first of these examples is something called non-spatial feature support. This is something that we need to have in the utility network to support that complex network I talked about for telecommunications companies. You think about a gas utility having a line, a single line represents a single pipe. You think about an electric utility, a single line in the GIS might represent 3 or 4 pieces of conductor, depending on how you wanted to model it. Well, you take that to a fiber strand or to a fiber cable, you might have buffer tubes and fiber strands inside that cable that represent literally thousands of connections. That needs a little bit of enhancement to the way our utility network organizes information to support, but we're working on it now. The other one that I'll mention, I'll take a second to point out, is the third one on this list, this idea of additional deployment options. Currently, the utility network requires a full ArcGIS Enterprise deployment in order to run. In the future, we're working towards providing more flexibility in your deployment pattern options for the utility network specifically as a capability of your WebGIS. So if you think about that, that could mean if you're a smaller organization that doesn't necessarily want to have a big set of infrastructure to manage this environment, you could deploy the utility network to ArcGIS Online possibly, and have that entire system managed as an application in the cloud. That opens up a lot of doors for future capabilities for the utility network. And that's something that we're working on. That one in particular is a little bit further down the roadmap, but it is something that we're thinking about and working on. If you've got specific questions about this roadmap, just send us a note in the Q&A panel and we can schedule a deeper dive conversation with you if you'd like. Now, from a business strategy perspective, we've been reiterating to our customers, many of you have probably heard it from me directly, that we want you to continue to evolve your use of ArcGIS as the utility network product evolves. And we've had a strategy that you can see here for the last couple of years that shows that. The utility network uses a vast set of capabilities within ArcGIS as a whole, and likewise ArcGIS is designed to be able to extend the use of your network management technology across the platform. It's important that you continue to evolve the use of ArcGIS Enterprise and our portal capabilities, continue to upgrade to newer versions of both desktop and server, make use of our templates that are available from solutions.arcgis.com, and stay on top of those enhancements and improvements. When you are ready, you can move to the utility network and we will happily support you on that. Now, I've talked about new capabilities and the roadmap a fair bit in this last little section here. So what I've done is I've tasked Jenny with going and looking through some of the newest capabilities that have come out in the utility network, and I've asked her if she could take just a few minutes to highlight those for us. So I'll pass things over to Jenny now to show us a couple of the latest and greatest enhancements to the utility network. Jenny?
Thanks, Brian. So one of the newest functionalities that was released with the latest ArcGIS Pro 2.2 release was the ability to change to historical database moments. Here, I'm actually looking at my distribution, my electric domain network, and I'm viewing the data at the current state in which the network is right now. And we can see that both circuits are fairly well balanced with the different customer loads as well as customer count. But imagine that just a week ago, the control center actually discovered that one of the feeders was actually more heavily loaded than the other. And at this point in time, they actually went and did a switching order to balance out the different feeders. But at this point in time, as an end user, it's quite difficult for me to actually understand why the switching order occurred, unless I can actually move back in time and see the state in which the network was at before the switching order occurred. So here, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create 2 different maps here. They're both looking at the same current data with my network information as it is right now. What I'll be doing is on the left side here, I will be changing the moment in time to be September 10th, a day before the switching order actually occurred. And once I go ahead and apply that, you'll start to see as it changes and refreshes the different customer load count, as well as the different load, customer load, as well as a difference in terms of the network distribution itself. You can see here that prior to the switching order, 001 was more heavily loaded in this area here, and then after, in current day, it was the switching order was done and moved a whole bunch of customers over to 003. Now, all of this transaction can be done, is being done through a services-based architecture. And this can easily be translated, this functionality can easily be translated into the web browser. The next example that I'll be showing you is actually showing you how you can utilize tracing functionality inside of a web browser. So here I've actually created an app using Web App Builder, and this can be given to someone in the control center or control room to do some simple analysis and tracing functionality. Just like in Pro, I'm able to see my electric domain network. And as a control room operator, I may need to do some tracing to identify some customers that would be affected from a potential outage. So here I can go ahead and open up my tracing widget and choose to do a downstream trace from a specific location. Have that trace run and return to me as a selection to select all of the different service points. And then I can get that list of service points and export it out into a CSV, which can then be passed over to the call center. Once the call center gets this list, they can go ahead and manually call them up to notify these customers of a potential outage. Now, having the ability to view the network data in a web browser was possible in the past, but doing things like running and executing trace functionality over the web was something that was very difficult. And now with the utility network being a fully services-based architecture, tracing capabilities, among others, are now easily accessible over the web. Brian?
Okay, thank you, Jenny. That's pretty interesting stuff you've shown there. I love seeing that. It's really interesting. You start thinking about the different use cases that could go along with that kind of analysis. It's really, really terrific. Now, with all that said and done, I think we need to think about what does our path forward really need to look like, or what should it look like. And if you're trying to figure out where you should go or what you should do going from here, it's important that you first think about some of the obstacles that you'll be likely to facing, as you'll never get anywhere if you don't get a good understanding of where you're starting from. Now, making a move to the utility network means many things, including recognizing that there's going to be significant data structure changes to your system, and that might result or require you to revisit a number of different processes. It also opens the door for you to think about data quality in a whole new level. Many of us, many customers use some of our different data quality analysis tools, whether it's the quality control tools that are built into our core technology, use that associated with partners, use extensions like the data reviewer. The utility network brings that right into the data management workflow to a whole new way. Jenny showed that concept of dirty areas earlier as part of network validation on the fly. You can think about how that can open up or create opportunities for you to improve your data management processes. There's also, along with the change in the way the network operates to being moved out of the database into the services tier, it opens up the doors for you to think about integrations to other systems. This can be inbound integrations as well as outbound integrations. So if you think about a couple simple examples, if you need to feed a power systems model or an ADMS, let's say, you can now export your network model as JSON, and in the future we're working towards having an export option that goes directly to a SIM compliant format. That may change the way you want to integrate GIS to your operational systems. On the flip side, You may have customer information that you store or manage alongside your GIS network model to support different kinds of customer service analyses workflows. You may be able to push that content directly into the network model through a web service in the future, which will enable you to possibly radically streamline the way that you interface GIS to a transactional system like that. You may also have a number of reports and different kinds of workflows and different artifacts and views that you may need to translate or revisit as part of moving to the utility network. And also the idea of workflows as a whole is something that you can take a moment to rethink. Jenny showed some very simple use cases for a capability that's built into ArcGIS Pro that didn't exist in ArcMap called tasks, where you can string different types of tools and different components together to form a workflow that guides a user through an activity. You can think about how that could radically change the way that you'd want to manage workflows for standardized data management tasks and make it actually much easier and faster for your staff to work within. And then also, of course, you're going to need to think about justification for making a change like this. What does the ROI look like for making a change, whether it's from a geometric network? Maybe you don't have a network at all, but you manage a series of assets inside GIS. Maybe you use a third-party system from a company that might be thought of as a competitor to Esri from a network management perspective. These are all things that you can think about and spend some time on, spend some time exploring. Now, luckily, we've been doing the same. We've been thinking about this a lot, and we've been working towards having information available for you. You do need to recognize that it's not a one-click exercise to create your roadmap, but at the same time, you shouldn't expect to have to do it alone. So we've been working hard to create information and documentation and recommended strategies for how to move forward with the utility network and streamline that transition. This image here shows you a couple documents that we've published and have updated regularly, one related to overall ArcGIS platform architecture best practices, and another one known as the roadmap or the road ahead for the utility network. But there's also other pieces that we've been working on for this, and it's specifically by documenting the process and the tools associated with making a transition from a more traditional GIS data model to the utility network. It will not be a simple process. It will not be a one-click process, but it's something that you can use to help you understand the gap between where you are and where you need to go so that you can plan and budget accordingly. So the next thing that comes up is, well, where do I begin? Where do I begin? Where's that first step? Well, if you need a place to begin thinking about this process, I've got a list here of suggestions for things that you could consider that will help you along this process. Now, I talked about the change in the data model and the change in the way that quality control is managed and what we're referring to as validation as part of the utility network standard process flow. This gives you an opportunity to sit back and really think about your data model. If you have a very good handle on your current data model, your current data structure, and also how you can leverage web maps to support broadening access to those data models, you can be much better positioned to understand what your roadmap needs to look like moving forward. Also, data quality planning is something that you can build a strategy around. Everyone wants to have perfect data. Nobody has it. So we have to think about what level of data quality do we require. If I have a primary business driver of supporting integration to an enterprise asset management system, that is a totally different level of data quality required than if I want to use my GIS network model to support an ADMS. So you need to think about where your business plan as an organization aligns with the technology and build your roadmap from that. I mentioned earlier a little bit about integrations. Another thing that I didn't mention there is this idea of what I've referred to here as the COTS Custom Capabilities Gap. COTS stands for off the shelf. I'm spacing on the C at the moment, but configurable off the shelf, there we go. versus custom capabilities. Many people have built custom tools, custom widgets, custom workflows to support their business with ArcGIS. There's a reasonably good chance that some or many or all of those customizations are either no longer business critical compared to when they were originally made, or are now supported with standard out-of-the-box capabilities. So it's a good opportunity for you to revisit what are those customizations and where have I customized and extended, or where do I need to integrate the utility network with other applications and business processes. There's also a change to be recognized from an end user perspective. So I need to have a training plan to understand how I'm going to move my end users from one end user application to another. And the final thing that I'll mention that's a major one is you need to think about your corporate culture and think about how this technology may or may not align with that. If you are a large organization that is typically extraordinarily risk-averse, implementing a utility network in the next couple years may not be in the cards for you. It is a relatively new product. We do have quite a few companies on the way to implement it right now, but it is still a new product. If you're looking for numerous peers that have been down the road before and have years of experience post-migration, implementing the utility network in the next couple years is probably not for you. That might be something that you want to target for 2022, 2023, something like that. But that gives you that much more time to build a plan that will work for your business. There we go. In response to that, and starting you down this path of quantifying and qualifying this fit for you, I want to encourage you to go and take this self-assessment. So the URL is at the bottom of the page here. You can fill this out. You get immediate response for an assessment based on answering just a handful of questions about how you use GIS and your network management technology, what kind of processes you support with it. And it will give you an immediate sort of qualification of your readiness for it. But then just as important or more important than that is it will connect you into a process flow where every week for the next, I believe it's 4 to 6 weeks, we will send you an email with some pieces of information for things to think about that include those documents I referenced earlier, information about how to build different kinds of plans to help you support this, and also give you the opportunity to interact with us, ask questions if you would like to dig into certain parts of it more. You can make all of those requests through here. If you'd like to talk with us immediately about this in more detail, you can definitely just put a comment into the Q&A and then we'll be able to follow up with you immediately. But if you want to learn more before you ask questions, this is a good way to get connected into that information flow. At the end of the day, it's all about working towards having a system that fully supports your business, is a best-of-class network management capability, supports workflow optimization, and ultimately helps you make better decisions about how you run your business. Going forward, the utility network is going to be a key component of that for ArcGIS, and we hope that it will be a key component of your operating model for many years to come. Now, we do want to help you get there. We want to help you get there in a way that makes the most sense for your business and aligns with the product roadmap for the utility network. Now, I would like to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day to participate in this webinar. Everyone who registered will be emailed access to this recording as well as a PDF of these slides. Additionally, we'll be posting the webinar recording to our archive page as soon as it's ready. We would like to get your feedback on the presentation, so please fill out the survey that you're going to be provided with once you close out of the webinar. And we will now stop the recording and open up well, we won't open the lines, but we'll be going through the Q&A panel to answer some specific questions. And we did have quite a few questions come in. So we'll start with, I would like to thank everyone for joining and asking all of these wonderful questions, or really good questions. And we hope everyone enjoys the rest of their day. Thanks for attending.